Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey Kerr. At the time of this recording, this year's Primetime Emmys just took place. Jack Mahanes is back to join me in recapping them. So, Jack, are you ready to begin?
Let's get into this. There's a lot to talk about with last night's ceremony, and I'm excited to just dive right into it.
Yeah, so I guess let's start by discussing some categories we got wrong, starting with the second award of the night, which was Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. Now, what was interesting is that, before the Creative Arts took place, Billy Crudup was the frontrunner to win a second Emmy for the morning show. Yet after Shogun dominated the Creative Arts, many, myself included, settled on Tadanobu Asano in this category. The Gold Derby odds had Asano and Crudup split 50-50, yet Asano did lead the predictions at the last minutes, but just barely, yet Crudup prevailed.
Yes, and it wasn't like a big surprise. I also took the bait and switched to Tadanobu Asano because the thing I was most skeptical about with Billy Crudup was that he won for season one, but then he had lost for season two. It's almost has not happened in the popular voting system since 2015 that someone has won, lost a season, and then won again the following season. It's just that hasn't happened except if you want to count Peter Dinklage, because he had won for season five. Well, he won for season one, but then as soon as the new voting system was put in place, he won for season five. He lost for season six, but then he came back and won again for season seven as well as season eight. I was a little bit skeptical. It's like, okay, is Billy Crudup like that popular to where he can, after losing to Matthew McFadden for season three, can he come back and win again? And he did. And I think that the morning show's huge performance with the acting nominations was a sign that it was going to pop up with a win somewhere. And this seemed like the easiest place. So not too much of a surprise. I just think that the 14 wins of the Creative Arts for Shogun was a little misleading because I think sometimes we often forget that it doesn't always carry over into how the acting branch is going to vote.
Yeah, like Queen's Gambit a few years ago, or when Stranger Things dominated Creative Arts in 2016, 2017, that led many people to believe that it was winning drama series, yet The Handmaid still beat it.
Definitely. And also, I remember last year there was some talk about The White Lotus or The Last of Us pulling off the upset for drama series when Succession didn't get anything at the Creative Arts. But Succession is not a tech-heavy show, so it was not a surprise, and then ended up, almost dominating on Emmy night. The only one that lost was drama supporting actress to Jennifer Coolidge. But yeah, no, I think that Billy Crudup, I will admit, have never gotten around to the morning show.
Neither have I.
Doesn't mean I never will, but I just I wasn't that surprised. I thought it was 50-50 between them, and when I went to Billy Crudup, I was like, oh, okay, the actors are going to spread it out a little bit.
Yeah, unlike last year where it felt like, oh, well, Emmyverse clearly only saw three shows all year long. No, this year they clearly saw more than just three.
Oh, definitely. And I think that it was cool. It was very cool that there was no show that did a complete clean sweep. And I'm not always opposed to that. Like, I was excited when The Crown season four did the clean sweep just because that was my favorite season of the show. Probably one of my favorite seasons of television of all time, to be, if I want to be honest with you. I mean, not that I would have maybe necessarily voted for everything that The Crown won that year, but the sweep did feel great. This time around, I think that there were just a lot of good shows, and it was nice to see a lot of shows get awarded somewhere. In terms of Billy Crudup as an actor, he's a fantastic actor. In the film side, he was great in Almost Famous, Spotlight, Jackie, and yeah, no, it was cool to see him win again.
Oh, yeah, and I guess it was also nice that between him and his newly minted wife, Naomi Watts, well, they at least both got to go home with one Emmy.
Yes, and he gave her a really cool shout out in his speech. I'm looking over there at my eye candy wife, who, delivered another great performance for which she's nominated and is an immigrant and is a business owner. And so, yeah, no, there was I remember in my awards group chat, like when Billy Crudup won, and then there were some surprise wins that happened. Some people were like, oh, that could be good news for either Juno Temple or Naomi Watts in limited series lead actress. Obviously, that didn't happen, and the obvious person won there. But, I think that this was probably the most chaotic Emmy ceremony probably in 4 years.
Yeah, now on to another category, Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. Now, you and I both were among many to have predicted Hannah Einbinder to win for Hacks, although I did have Eliza Cullen-Zayas in second, mainly due to how The Bear dominated the creative arts. I knew it was possible the latter could win as part of a potential sweep, which did happen in a way, maybe not completely, but yeah, when Liza won, they got me a little worried that Io Adebrio was going to upset Jean Smart in lead actress, which thank God she didn't.
Yeah, to be honest with you, and I don't mean any disrespect to Liza Colin-Zayas. Now, I like The Bear more than you do, and I like Liza's character. She just didn't have a whole lot to work with in season two. Like, it really felt to me very much like J. Smith Cameron's role in Succession. It really felt that way. And when she won, that was the only win that happened where I was like, oh, are you serious? Even if, like, I didn't love maybe some other wins, or maybe some wins were like, oh, of course. That one was just kind of like, oh, are you serious? Like, this was Hannah Einbinder's best season on Hacks. And while she was not my pick for her first two seasons on the show, this time around, I was for her winning. And when she didn't win, I was like, it kind of felt like if she wasn't going to win it this time, is she ever going to win it? And I think that it's starting to look like she may be a Christine Baranski in The Good Wife, keeps getting nominated and supporting, but never wins, even though it's lead actress, wins a lot. So it kind of feels the same way at this point, unless Hacks gets like this big, Schitt's Creek type celebration for whenever the final season is going to happen. I'm pretty sure that they said that they're ending it after 5 seasons.
And, if Amanda Spears were here, she'd probably be saying something like, look, if Hannah Einbinder couldn't win up against Liza Colin-Zayas, she's never winning an Emmy, period.
Yeah, and I think that I was talking about this with some award friends, and something that Luca Gilaberte told me back in 2021 was just kind of, comparing some Emmy notes with him. And I was very confident that Hannah Waddingham was going to win that year. But I mentioned, how much of a threat is Hannah Einbinder. And he said, to be honest, I don't really think she is, because I think that someone who's playing kind of a whiny young millennial woman is probably not a character that's going to resonate with that group of voters. And I think that that's continued to be true. Like, there are some people, like, the character is just never going to connect with voters, no matter how good the performance is. Like, I think a lot about, like, for entirely different reasons. I think about Lena Headey, who was fantastic in Game of Thrones as Cersei, but just that character was almost never sympathetic, was very chilly, was even cool evil. She was just evil. That was just a very key reason why she was never able to win, even though she had some seasons where she was deserving of winning. I kind of feel like this was Hannah Einbinder's big chance. I could be wrong. And I remember before last year's ceremony, and when she made the switch to lead, I was like, I think Sarah Snook is probably not going to win an Emmy because of the nature of her character in Succession, or, the fact that if she stayed in supporting. But then when she went to lead and we saw the makeup of that lineup, Shiv became way more sympathetic as the series went on. It became clear that she was going to win for drama lead actress. And so, yeah, but even if they moved Hannah Einbinder up to lead, which a lot of people think she should be in lead, she's never going to beat Jean Smart. And yeah, I was first, as you said earlier, I was briefly like, do I have to worry about Jean Smart now? And I even, as Candice Bergen was going through the category, I was like, oh God, like, just please at least give me Jean Smart. At least give me Jean Smart. I know the Bears winning a lot, but just at least give me Jean. And then she won. I was like, oh, thank goodness. And if you noticed, when Candice Bergen, she announced it, and the Emmy goes to the amazing Jean Smart. For a brief moment, like as she was saying the amazing, Io raised her eyebrows for a split second before she said Jean Smart. So I wonder if Io for a brief moment thought it was her.
Course, I heard a story how at the 2015 BAFTA Awards, when Best Supporting Actor was presented and they announced the winner, they said Mark, and everyone in the spotlight team got excited because they first assumed it was Mark Ruffalo before I heard Rylance.
Yes.
Now onto a category I actually did go out on a limb on, and Scott's right, was Outstanding Directing for a Limited Series or Movie. Now, you were among the many to have predicted Baby Reindeer to win for episode 4, although I settled on Ripley due to that having the same director, Steven Zalian, at the helm of every single episode. Plus, it also did pretty well at the creative arts, which included a win for outstanding cinematography. And so the trend continues of whenever a director is nominated for helming an entire limited series themselves, they're the ones to beat, even up against the limited series frontrunner.
Yes, and I knew that Baby Reindeer could very well lose directing. And I even said when I finished the series about a week ago, actually sometime after we recorded our last podcast episode, I was tempted to go there, but I did think that, Baby Reindeer was going to have a big night there. I thought it was just kind of the safe bet. But I was, one of the things I did think was, you know what? I kind of hope there are two places that I was like, I kind of hope they spread the wealth and don't give it to Baby Reindeer. Not that like any of them were like necessarily like, unworthy, but I didn't think the directing was like the big standout with the show. The writing and the performances were like the big standout. You don't come away from that show really thinking about the direction. And so it's like I was kind of hoping that like they would go do something like throw a curveball in directing, and they did. The other category, I was kind of hoping that they wouldn't go for Baby Reindeer was Tom Goodman Hill, because I don't think, even though like he had some good material, I don't know if it really struck me as a winning performance. But that's just me. So Baby Reindeer, in my opinion, won the four categories it deserved to win.
And since you brought it up, well, why don't we discuss outstanding supporting actor in a limited series or movie? Now, many were split over who was winning. I, like a number of people, settled on Jonathan Bailey for Fellow Travelers, although some wondered if Robert Downey Jr. could still win for The Sympathizer despite his show having no other nominations, although some did wonder if Tom Goodman Hill would get caught in a Baby Reindeer sweep. So, Lamorne Morris winning for the fifth season of Fargo was a huge surprise. In fact, I was looking at how I did my predictions earlier today and noticed I actually had him in last place.
I did too. But this was the first one where I was like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. And I had him in last place too. And because I really thought that, like, it was between Jonathan Bailey and Robert Downey Jr., but it seemed like Fellow Travelers was better received than The Sympathizer, not just in terms of the nomination count, but also in terms of the acclaim for the show. But I do think that Fellow Travelers being a Showtime series absolutely worked against Jonathan Bailey. I really do believe that. I just didn't really think too much about the order after Jonathan Bailey and Robert Downey Jr. Actually, I did have Tom Goodman Hill in third, just in case like Baby Reindeer did get on a sweep. But yeah, that was a name I did not even have in my mind when they were going through the category that could be a possibility of winning. And I think that Joyce Ang mentioned to Chris Rosen more than once that she was hoping that it was going to be someone other than Jonathan Bailey and Robert Downey Jr. because chaos, I think, was needed as opposed to, the very boring ceremony we had last year. Not that last year had undeserving winners. It's just if you went with who was out front in almost every category, chances are you got pretty much every category right. It was a cool surprise. It's actually the very first acting win for Fargo in its five seasons, as well as this was the very first acting win for True Detective in limited series lead actress for the fantastic Jodie Foster. I think that surprises are needed and every now and then, and I think it feels good if you as long as like you were like heavily rooting for the person who was favored.
Yes, now on to outstanding writing for a comedy series. I settled on The Bear as part of a potential sweep for that show. You were settled on Hacks up until the last minute, which was a big mistake on your part there.
It was. I finally got talked out of it a few hours before the show. He's going to remain nameless because I'm not going to throw him under the bus. But he was just saying, like, you may want to give up on that Hacks prediction and writing, Jack, because the Bear is just too strong that you really may only get Gene Smart, Hannah Einbinder, and that's pretty much it. But then when writing, I was just like, ugh. I made three big changes since the last podcast recording for the ceremony. I only got 1 out of 3 right. Drama supporting actor and comedy writing were switches I made to where I regretted them because I got them wrong.
Not the first time something like this has happened, nor will be the last. Like, one example is, okay, at the 2015 Golden Globes, I, for a while, had The Martian predicted to win Best Comedy Musical Picture, yet from having followed Gold Derby then, they keep saying, oh, no, it's not a comedy, it can't win, it's not a comedy, it's not a comedy. So I was pretty much talked into switching to The Big Short, and, well, then I end up with Serious Egg on my face. On to two more categories, which offered quite a bit of chockaroo. Now, for outstanding writing for a drama series, a majority of people, including both of us, settled on the Shogun episode Crimson Sky to pull through. But since there was another episode in contention, vote splitting might have been a factor, so Slow Horses pulled through for its showrunner, Will Smith, not the violent actor.
By the way, before we talk more about this, I had a correction I think you and I need to make from our last podcast recording. We accidentally referred to Crimson Sky as the season finale of Shogun, and that's actually the second to last episode of Shogun. So that was minor correction or on you and I's part. But yeah, going back to this, yes. There was talk for a while about Slow Horses winning this category. And I think that the question that a lot of people were wondering, like, had enough people caught up with Slow Horses for it to win something major? I have not watched the show just yet. I mean, I am a big Gary Oldman fan, but I think that when it won this category, it made sense because one of the things that people do talk the most about when Slow Horses is what a well-written show it is. And I love the joke that he made about Will Smith on stage. That was really funny.
Yeah, which was, don't worry, despite my name, I come in peace.
Yes. And I think that I think it was at that point where, it really was proof that like the TV Academy was watching a lot of shows and they were really making inspired choices. And Joy Sang mentioned that since Game of Thrones 2016, that we've gotten some really amazing wins in drama writing. So The Handmaid's Tale, The Americans, Succession, The Crown, Succession, and now Slow Horses. So yeah, the writers, I think it seems like they're really on a roll in terms of making, winner choices that are going to age very well when we look back on them. And so, yeah, no, I think that this is a cool surprise. I think it's possible that the Shogun episode split, although a lot of people don't really love Pilot. It is interesting that Shogun lost when there was one episode that was way more acclaimed than the other. But at the same time, maybe Shogun is just seen more as a director's show than a writer's show. And I think it's very clear that Slow Horses is a very writer-friendly show. I shouldn't say it's no surprise. It was a surprise, but it absolutely made sense when it happened. What I wonder, because Shogun's not going to be back for the next cycle, I don't know how long Slow Horses is going to go for, but I wonder if this bodes well for Gary Oldman's chances of winning in the future. Because I actually briefly thought when Slow Horses won this, I was like, could Gary actually win this? But I still thought Hero was still likely going to, but I did kind of briefly wonder for a second if Gary might have pulled it off. And to be honest, he probably was the one in second.
Well, let's go to the final award of the night, which, interestingly enough, wasn't Outstanding Drama Series. It was Outstanding Comedy Series, which, okay, first let me say that when Catherine O'Hara presented, okay, her tearing up the envelope before revealing another one was priceless. Now,
love that.
As for the winner, okay, we all thought the Bear had this locked up, especially after Creative Arts last weekend where it sweat. So a lot of us expected it to happen again here. And, I was ready to call it nights, but then she announced the winner was Hacks.
And I gotta say, this is the most shocking ending to an award ceremony that I've seen since the whole envelope gate at the Oscars back in 2017. This was a cool surprise as opposed to, a shocking mix-up at the Oscars those years ago. To be honest, I don't think anyone saw this one coming. And even after the writing win, I mean, the Bear still won directing. I think that's something Matt Neglia said at some point, maybe not this year, the controversy about whether or not the Bear is really a comedy is going to catch up to it. And that finally happened this year. We expected that it was likely going to happen next year. But yeah, I literally did a double take when Catherine O'Hara said that. I was like, wait a minute, did she just say Hacks? But I gotta say, I love that it won because I really thought that this was a fantastic season of Hacks. I thought that season 2 of The Bear was great, but I think that Hacks season 3 was a real breakthrough for the show. Luca Gilaberte mentioned on Twitter that the branch that probably carried it to victory, however narrow that victory was probably the writer's branch, to be honest. And I remember Chris Rosen said that, writers probably hate the most that The Bear is labeled a comedy. So they probably played a big role in carrying Hacks over the finish line. And now, my very, very early prediction going forward, I think that Hacks is probably going to be the new Veep. And I think that Jean Smart, I think that now she's officially three-peat. She overcame, the Bear machine, even though the Bear won the other three acting awards. And two of those acting categories had cast members from Hacks in them. The fact that she overcame that. And, she had, I think, somewhat competition with Quinta Brunson a couple years ago. But, this one was probably maybe a little bit more competitive against Io Debris. But I think the fact that she's won when they provided, some stiff competition, I think she's going to win until the show ends. Unless the show dips in quality, which I don't think it will.
Oh yeah, and I guess now watch her lose for the final season to a breakthrough show a la Fleabag.
Yeah, but that I feel like was just a once in a lifetime, show. It's going to be very, very hard for a show, that small to make as big of a break as Fleabag did.
Well, yeah, and did hear, rumblings, well, at least from predictors, wondering if, the third season of The Bear airing during final voting, which, while was mostly well received, it just wasn't as acclaimed as the first two seasons. They wondered if the reception of the third season would have any impact on season two at this year's Emmys.
To be honest, it probably played somewhat of a role. It definitely played a role last year in its sweep because they really were, I think judging on both seasons 1 and 2 because the fact that season 2 was premiering during final voting. Season 3, the fact that, the reception of it went down, that may have hurt it in the final tally. This is, I think, the big mystery, and I definitely want to get your take on this. So Hacks won the comedy series category with just Jean Smart winning comedy lead actress and comedy writing. In that case, if Hacks won comedy series, how did Hannah Einbinder lose? And how did it lose casting? Those things would have signaled an upset in comedy series. But I just did not think that it just winning, comedy lead actress and comedy writing was enough for it to get the series win. Like, I know we said that the writers probably played a big role in pushing over the finish line. But aside from that, how do you think it happened?
Maybe The Bear won those categories out in a close race. We'll probably never know.
Yeah, no, it's surprising, but I'm thrilled about it because I think a lot of people were hoping that Hacks would eventually win the comedy series prize, but it came sooner than a lot of people thought it would. And yeah, I think that it's going to be the one to beat next year because they are going to start filming this fall.
A few days from now.
Yes, a few days from now. And I think we'll certainly be back in time before June 1st.
Now into the show itself. What were your thoughts on that telecast as a whole?
So I thought that Eugene and Dan, I thought they did a good job. I thought, a lot of their jokes were not like dying laughing, but they were just good chuckles. Like, that's funny. They work really well together on screen. I loved the ending when they brought Annie Murphy on stage because they were all going to introduce Catherine O'Hara. So it was really cool to see that reunion again on stage because they were really funny when they presented comedy writing and directing the year after the Schitt's Creek sweep. I thought that was cool. I thought it was interesting how the audience was really like not terribly enthusiastic throughout the show, with maybe the exception of a couple people. Like, the two that really stood out in terms of like big standing ovations were Jean Smart and Jodie Foster. Other than that, they just didn't really seem like too into it. And like, I was talking about this with someone and, it didn't sour the win for me at all. I just kind of thought, that was a little like light. I was extremely excited, even though it was a foregone conclusion, that Elizabeth Debicki won for the final season of The Crown. Because to me, of all the TV series I watched for this season, that was my favorite performance of the year. She, I think, won by a blowout. But still, like the audience, like, just kind of gave like a nice like clap, and then like they kind of stopped clapping as she was like halfway up the stairs. And it was just kind of like, that's kind of weird. My theory is like, I don't think, the audience maybe was that excited about anyone in that category. And also, Debicki was just such a foregone conclusion that there was nothing that felt climactic about that. It was just like, oh, of course, she won as expected, no matter how deserved that win was. And, that was my personal favorite win of the night.
Hmm.
But I just thought it was interesting how the audience was just kind of like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, yeah, in fact, I believe Matt Neglia mentioned on the recap podcasts earlier that, he was actually happy to see, not see so many endless standing ovations after another. Those only happens for, special occasions throughout the night, which I have to agree with.
And, of course, it would happen for Jean Smart because she is a comedic goddess. And of course, Jodie Foster because she is, one of the all-time greats. I mean, those were, ovations that were really, really cool to see.
Oh, yeah, and I should add that Jodie Foster winning for True Detective 9 Country was probably my favorite win tonight because I thought she absolutely crushed it on the latest season.
I haven't seen anyone who has really complained about it, and from award people that I know. But I think some are more enthusiastic than others because some people I know, I think if I talked to most of my award friends, they were kind of hoping for Juno Temple. But I did think that seemed like a little bit too much of an uphill battle.
Even though I'm sure it probably made them hopeful after Lamore and Morris won.
Definitely, yeah. No, it was a good show. And I think that the surprises that happened made it really exciting. And I think that, it ending with the biggest Emmy shock probably since Zendaya in 2020, I think really, really made it a very entertaining show.
I thought Dan and Eugene Levy both did a decent job hosting, and I also enjoyed some of the presenters. Like, I loved not only seeing the reunions, but also the pairings of TV archetype characters like the mothers, fathers, or policemen or coaches.
I love that too. My personal favorite was the lawyers presentation, TV lawyers with Viola Davis, Christine Baranski, and Gina Torres. My mom and my brother particularly loved that because I never watched the show, but they're huge fans of the show Suits. That was a moment that they really enjoyed.
Well, yes, and I also thought Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez presenting the first word together was hilarious, and the Saturday Night Live reunion I thought was funny, and Brendan Hunt and Jane Lynch both introducing Olympians to hint them the envelope was clever.
Yeah, definitely, and especially the Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez bit because they play off so well together. I've only seen bits and pieces of Only Murders in the Building, like just kind of like highlighted clips, maybe like that just kind of go around Twitter. But I think it was very interesting when I heard that Steve Martin and Martin Short were going to do a show with Selena Gomez. I was like, that's an interesting trio. I wonder how it's going to work. They play off so well together. And even like I loved in this segment where Martin Short was like, "Oh, Steve and I made a agreement to vote for each other. So like Steve, I vote for you. Steve, what'd you do?" And Steve was just kind of like, "I'm not answering that." Like he was just like, "I plead the fifth." Like basically implying like, "Nope, I vote for myself. I want that Emmy."
Yes, and also Jean Smart was also funny when she presented Outstanding Limited Series, especially when she mentioned that she thought Baby Reindeer was some sort of prequel about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Because yeah, I mean, when I first heard that title, when it came out, I had no idea what it was about. And then, yeah, when you watch that show, you're definitely in for a trip.
And also, I guess one last note I'd like to make about the ceremony is that the in memoriam segment with Jelly Roll performing, I thought was touching. Although when Jimmy Kimmel came out at the end of it, I thought it was going to be an awkward moment until he started paying tributes to the late Bob Newhart.
Yeah, that definitely worked.
So, any other notes you'd like to make before we sign off?
Just that this was probably the most exciting Emmy ceremony in a long time in terms of, the fact usually we get like, just like one, maybe two of the most surprises. There were quite a few. I remember thinking, because it was earlier in the show, the two things I was hoping for the most were Elizabeth Debicki in drama supporting actress and Jean Smart continuing her winning streak in comedy lead actress. Those are the two things I wanted the most to happen. And when they both happened, I just thought, you know what? I welcome the chaos. TV Academy, give us some shockaroos. And boy, did they deliver.
That just about does it for our recap of this year's Emmys. Thanks again for joining me today, Nick. This was great.
This was great, Jeffrey, and thanks for having me on again.